First of all, I just want to say thank you for being patient with me and for continuing with me on this journey of mine. I know that I have been gone for a bit, but life has had me on a roller coaster these last couple of months. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that my focus has shifted, but it certainly has changed the things that I am now in complete pursuit of, and I hope you find some value in them. So I started a Bible study a few weeks ago, and we have covered a variety of topics based on Ephesians 6:10 through 19, the armor of God. And one of the topics that has been on my mind lately has been peace. And it's not just any peace, but it's that perfect, abiding, constant peace. The world gives us the impression that peace is the absence of conflict, chaos, and problems. It gives this illusion that if we have peace, then we won't encounter any problems in life. Like we hear, oh, the only way to get rid of global conflict is through world peace. But the word tells us something quite different. The word tells us that peace is what we possess in the middle of chaos, conflict, and problems. There's a reason why Jesus tells us in John 14:27, peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. And then about 2 sentences later, he says to us, let not your hearts be troubled, neither let it be afraid. So if peace is the absence of trouble, then why would Jesus encourage us to not let our hearts be troubled or be afraid? You know, he tells us in John 16:33, these things I have spoken to you that you may have peace. And he continues, in the world you will have tribulation, but don't freak out. Be of good cheer because I have overcome the world. Now, based on these 2 scriptures alone, we see that peace does not stop life from lifing. Peace doesn't stop us from encountering challenges in our marriage. It doesn't stop us from experiencing difficulties or hardships in our finances or in our health. Peace doesn't even divert the storms of life. This peace that the Bible talks about, this one that is always present, always abiding, this perfect peace, I can tell you from this short journey and the things that I have encountered over the last couple of months, this is only found in Christ. This perfect peace isn't circumstantial though, thank God. There aren't any conditions we need to meet to employ this peace. This perfect peace is so unconditional that it doesn't care. It has no regard for what's happening in or around us. It just stands up in the face of life's most difficult situations, those raging storms, and it makes us to know that despite what we see, what we hear, what we feel, what we experience, that baby, all is well. Now, when we talk about storms, we look at what we consider storms today versus what storms may have been sometime in our past. Like I'm used to storms looking like layoffs or health scares or broken relationships, like in the form of my first marriage that ended in divorce. But today's storms look like identity crisis and questions of self-worth and value. They look like these unintentional comparisons we make because we've been told what the latest requirements are for acceptance. These requirements that seems to change with every trend that comes out. Storms for me personally look like thoughts that disrupt my sleep, panic attacks that are sparked by 2 little words, what if? You know, in those instances, there isn't a particular situation or set of circumstances that I'm dealing with. It's just the combination of everything I may have seen or heard or been exposed to that's just rolling around in my mind, making me long for the stability and the quiet that peace provides. Because life is a journey, baby. Like, I don't care who or what you believe in, life is a journey, and it is one that is filled with people. And like any journey, it's equipped with people and circumstances that represent twists and turns and cliffs, and you get some watering holes, you know, some places of refreshing, but those other things exist too. I foolishly used to think that isolation was the key to peace because I figure if I'm by myself, nobody around to piss me off. But it was in isolation, ironically, that I found the most disturbance and disruption to my idea of peace because all of a sudden the noise started coming out of my own head. It makes me wonder if the addiction we have to social media and the constant scrolling when we're alone is because we're afraid of what we hear or might hear in the silence. When left alone with our own thoughts about how life is versus how we think it should be, or even worse, how it compares to someone else's, we follow a very dark, very scary, very dangerous path. But peace doesn't stop these thoughts from flaring up. After all, our mind is what gives the enemy access to our emotions, and our emotions influence our behavior. If peace prevented any part of that chain, Satan would have to be like our neighbors to the north and write down the 5 things he does in a day just to justify his own existence. Peace, however, allows us to understand those thoughts for precisely what they are, merely distractions. And so we can cast them down and simply move on. Peace is what allows us to know that what we see and what we experience, what we go through has limitations. By the grace of God, it can only go so far. I spent one evening this past week, like I usually do, toggling between my 3 favorites, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. I always like to start with Facebook first because I feel like it's boring enough that I can control the amount of time I spend on it. So my routine is I open the app, I check my notifications, see what the latest scandal or drama is, and then I move on. But this particular night last week, though, I followed my regular routine, and the first thing I saw was a local newspaper's article about the young man who tragically lost his life. The article explained that he had apparently witnessed or intervened in a sexual assault, and he rescued the victim. And this act of bravery, though, was somehow connected to him then being shot and then succumbing to his injuries some months later. I like being aware of what's happening in my country, but for heaven's sake, I hate that I am updated every 7 to 10 minutes on the latest murder or hit and run or assault or some other violent crime, something to make me upset. Like, I was literally minding my own business, 2 weeks ago, when I came across the video of the young man who was gunned down in front of his daughter. Contrary to popular belief, contrary to what influencers are saying, there is still such a thing as too much information. There is still such a thing as information overload. And it certainly doesn't help that all media seems to race to cover any tragedy or fear-inducing incident, while they apparently move at a snail's pace to cover anything that's positive and uplifting. Think about the news cycle if you don't believe me. It starts with crime, some government/union drama, the weather, sports, the weather again, and then they end with some good news. They end on a high note. So tie this in with your own reality, right? Take the person on your job who just pissing you off, and then add that to deciding who to give the mortgage money to this month, the bank or BPL. And then add to that the school fees that always due, even though every 6 weeks these kids are on midterm break. Top that off with the price of egg, and then now being constantly aware of other people's troubles, their suffering, their drama, their sorrow, and their grief. It's enough to give you heart problems. I spoke about it briefly in my blog last week, but last year I gained a lot and I had some amazingly wonderful experiences, but I also lost a lot, and I am right now struggling with grief. If gaining a husband and losing your matron of honor to cancer in the space of 3 weeks is not the Olympic tryouts for peace, then babes, I don't know what is. If being in a young marriage and both you and your husband are grieving significant losses that just happen to be 1 day apart, if that isn't the heavyweight fight of peace, I don't know what to tell you. And now add to that my everyday real experience of not just working with my husband, but also for him, and sometimes having some very different ideas about how things should be done in his company, the one that was around and successful before me. If you wonder where I got my audacity from, it's from TV. I am, however, hoping, though, that by sharing this, it encourages you to develop an appreciation for peace, or at the very least understand why it's so important to me. These very real life experiences in no way, shape, or form make me an expert on the steps to acquiring perfect peace. but they have certainly put me in hot pursuit of it, and I can tell you without the shadow of a doubt that it starts with Jesus. Again, I'm still learning how to acquire this perfect peace. But what I have found so far is that I get to decide. I decide to employ peace. But that doesn't mean that if I don't employ it, that it's not there. Peace is always present, willing, and ready to be used. I'm finding that perfect peace begins with the word and what it says about fear and anxiety, worry, grief, and depression, and the consequences of allowing them to take root in my life. It begins with knowing that each of those emotions and the events, the circumstances, and sometimes the people that trigger them are all part of the experience of life. But guess what? I still get to choose how much of my life they occupy and also the decisions I make as a result. Acquiring peace starts with me making the practical step of committing my day to the Lord and giving Him permission to guide me throughout the day. Lord, order my steps. It starts with me acknowledging the fact that things may not go the way that I expect and learning to be okay with that because His plans are always far better than mine. And guess what? As His child, He is ultimately in control. Perfect peace requires practice and intentionality. It requires the practice of not freaking out over the small things. It requires letting go and knowing that I don't have to be in control of everything and everyone around me, which I am learning is where manipulation starts, but that's a different story for a different day. This perfect peace, I'm learning it starts with the decision I get to make to let not my heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. If you have found any value in what I've had to say, or if you know someone who may find some value in it, do me a favor, please. Hit like and subscribe to the channel, and then please share it, because this is a journey and I feel like peace is one of those things that we could never have enough of, and it's one of those things that should not be optional in our lives.